Well, Raider Nation, I think we're all glad that one is in the books. What's up? Jesse Merrick here, coming to you from the field at Allegiant Stadium following the Raiders' loss to the Giants. 34-10 to the New York Giants. That was one of the worst games we've seen in person here at Allegiant Stadium, dating back to probably, 2 years ago in that game to the Vikings. Now, look, there's a lot to dive into in this game. First and foremost, the Raiders understood the assignment. They now own the top pick in the NFL draft. They have an 80% chance at holding on to that pick. We'll be diving into that and what it means for this team, and in terms of the history, too, of why they fumbled in a lot of these situations over the years. But right now, they're sitting in the driver's seat. I know a lot of you guys are really happy about that. I'll give you my thoughts on that and kind of what they could do with that pick, and also how things stand in terms of draft positioning and how far they could fall if they're able to win next week against the Chiefs. Also, we do have to talk about Maxx Crosby. We've had Pete Carroll a bit more about him and his absence today. And also the one thing that really stood out to me about his absence, a big takeaway from what I saw from that defense and what's needed there without a Maxx Crosby in the lineup. And also, too, we got to talk about some of the standouts for this team. Obviously, Michael Mayer goes off. A big day for him. I got a lot of thoughts on him and just him finally breaking through and why that should still be the case even when Brock Bowers is playing for this team. And we'll see what else we get to as well. Let's have a good one here, guys. Now, look, obviously it's weird being in a good mood after a loss, especially for a lot of you Raiders fans. I said it. It was so wild to hear the mixed cheers, boos, everything when the Raiders did something bad. And a lot of it was Raiders fans rooting for that pick from Geno Smith, rooting for when he got sacked on third down and they go and kick the field goal. And I totally get it, but my God, it's so weird because you guys are an awesome fan base, and I'm not taking anything away from you whatsoever, but it's just such a weird thing to wrap your head around here in Raider Nation, here at home, rooting for the Raiders to do poorly. And again, I know it's decades upon decades of poor play from this organization and them fumbling the bag in situations like this. Over the last 3 seasons, the Raiders were 7-5 in games in December and January, and because of it, they were left out of position to draft a quarterback. And now they look like they're in the driver's seat to get a quarterback, and that is massive for this team to finally be able to do that. That is a huge asset for this franchise, possibly the biggest asset they've had in, a decade plus in terms of where they're sitting right now in the draft. And so, yes, that is a big deal. While I hate talking about the draft while the season is going on, that's where the discussion has to go, especially for the Raiders right now, currently sitting with that first overall pick in this game. So obviously that's going to be something we're going to be keeping an eye on and talking a lot about for this team. So let's dive into where things stand for the Raiders right now. Again, obviously right now they have the top pick in the NFL draft. They're sitting at 2-14. There's a whole host of teams behind them at 3-13 on the season. How far can they fall if they win next week against the Chiefs? That's the big question. And by my math, the furthest they can fall is the number 2 overall in the NFL draft. And that's obviously huge for this team. That's why this game was so big for them to lose. Now, the reason that seems to be the case is because if you look at their strength of schedule, the Raiders' strength of schedule is about 54.3%. The Giants would leapfrog them if they're able to beat the Chiefs, and they would jump into the first pick. The Jets, their strength of schedule is 55.2%. The Titans, 57.4%, and the Cardinals, 57.7%. So let's look at the Jets here. 55.2 to 54.3%, at least for the strength of schedule for the Raiders. I don't know that another team is going to be able to make that up in the final week of the season. So I believe the worst the Raiders can do is sitting at number 2 overall in the NFL draft. I know that's going to make a lot of you guys happy. Now let's talk about a top 2 pick for this team, because that looks like that's what's most likely for them in this deal going forward, all right? They're finally in position to be able to draft their quarterback of the future, and really, that's all that matters for this team. We've seen it time and time again. Teams are just constantly, and particularly the Raiders, spinning their wheels until they get their coach and their quarterback, okay? For the longest time, the Raiders have been trying to find both of those. Well, now they're in a position where they can be a very attractive team to a coach wanting to come in and draft their quarterback of the future. Now, look, I'm saying all this thinking that I think Pete Carroll is gone. We talked to him after the game here. He said that he believes he's got the, support of ownership of Mark Davis based on his conversations with him and the rest of the ownership group throughout the season up to this point. He talks to him after every single game. Today was a fairly long one. We waited for a while there, and a lot of that happens to do because he's talking to the fans or talking to his team in the locker room as well. But look, he said he feels that he has the support of ownership. And then he also followed that up by saying, what does that even mean right now? Like, Pete's been there, done that. He's 74 years old. He knows the NFL game. He knows it's a business. He knows he's probably, on his way out right now. For quite some time, he has realized that he's coaching for his job. And I think it's in the team's best interest to move on. I've not shied away from that on the podcast. I've said that for quite a while here now, and I think that's where the Raiders are heading in this one. And the reason why I think they have to do that is because, look, you go and look around the league, the big-time coaches that are succeeding right now, the Ben Johnsons, the Liam Cohens, the Mike Vrabels. You even go look in Carolina. Look what they're doing with Dave Canales as well. Each of those guys going to teams where they're either in position to get their quarterback or where they already have their quarterback. And right now, the Raiders are in a spot to be able to attract an offensive-minded coach, or at least just a very quality coach, to be able to draft and handpick their quarterback of the future. And that is something that I know you fans have been waiting for and crying for so long. It looks like there will be no more Band-Aids for this team. And that is something that I know you guys are fired up to finally be able to hear and say in regards to the silver and black. And that's why, even though for me, as a guy who covers the game and can't wait each and every year for the season to arrive and hates talking about the draft at this point in the year, totally and fully understands the importance of a moment like this for the Raiders, which, again, is just so wild to wrap your head around coming out of a loss for them. Again, so this is one of those deals where now you look at it and they can go and pick their guy. Now, the big question is, who is that guy going to be? Is it going to be Fernando Mendoza, or is it going to be Dante Moore? If they're sitting at number 2, that discussion could be made for them. That decision could be made for them. We've seen it over the years. You look at a couple teams out there that have had that decision made for them, and it's worked out pretty well for them. We talked about it with the Texans. That is one of those teams. They missed out on possibly being able to pick their quarterback, and instead they're stuck, quote-unquote, with C.J. Stroud, and look how that has turned out for them. Obviously, it's been pretty solid for them, and I think a lot of Raiders fans would trade places with them. Even though they've just had, shorter playoff runs, they're still getting to the playoffs, and they've been a team that's not been sitting at the bottom of the league for that long. So, again, who's it going to be? Right now, the big debate is, look, you look at Fernando Mendoza. He's got the resume. He's kind of been there, done that, but he hasn't really quite blown up until he got to Idaho or to Indiana. You know what I mean? So, he wasn't really in that conversation until that point. And so he burst onto the scene. And then there's so many people that talk about the resume or lack thereof with Dante Moore. But, man, that kid is one hell of a passer. Yes, he doesn't have the number of starts to his name. I believe he's only got 18 or 19 starts to his name. He's 20 years old. But also, too, he's got a very big runway, too. So that's one of those things where I could see them being comfortable taking a guy like him in that spot. So we'll see how it all shakes up for them. But, man, I am so curious to see how it pans out. And, again, the playoff, like we talked about on this podcast, is going to play a big role in deciding who ends up going number one overall. But I'll tell you this right now, and we'll be talking about this leading up to the game against the Chiefs. After today's showing, I like the Raiders' chances to lose that final game of the season to the Kansas City Chiefs. I didn't get to the question of the day. So this question now, if you guys are still listening, the question of the day right now, I want to know. Right now, the Raiders are sitting with the first overall pick in the NFL draft. Who do you guys want the Raiders to take if they end up with the top pick in the NFL draft? And we got a two-parter for you here as well, okay? I want you guys to tell me, with that number 1 overall pick and moving forward, if you think they're going to be able to lose to the Chiefs. All right, I'm just really curious overall for the second part of this question, honestly, is how you guys are going to go into that game. Would you be comfortable with sitting at number 2 overall? Do you want number 1 overall? Are you rooting for the Raiders to lose that game? That is just something, again, for me that's hard to hear you guys wrap your heads around because it's the Chiefs. I know it's not Patrick Mahomes, but it is the frickin' Chiefs. So I want to know what you guys are thinking heading into the last game. Are you thinking to lose out and head off into the sunset with the top overall pick? Are you comfortable beating the Chiefs, sitting at number 2? One of you guys on Twitter did say that you guys would be comfortable in that situation. So answer those 2 questions for me. Number 1, who do you want at number 1 if they do indeed end up holding on to that pick? And number 2, how do you go into that final game of the season against the Chiefs? Are you doing it with a similar approach to today? Or are you rooting for them to beat them because it's the Chiefs and you're fine with dealing with the draft however it pans out? I'm real curious what your guys' answer are on that front. You guys have been so great in the comments with your questions. It's been awesome. Like I said, I listen and read all of them. I'm not always able to get back to them, but I try and backtrack and get to them as soon as I can. But yeah, guys, look, now let's start actually diving into today's game. God, that was a piss poor effort overall. And I hate saying that because those guys are out there competing their asses off. And who am I? A guy that just sits up here and talks as a mic that played D2 football. You know what I mean? And not very well. So I don't mean that as a slight or whatever. You know what I mean? I just spitting the facts here that was a tough outing. You lose 34-10 to a Giants team that a lot of people have said is the worst team in the league and is also missing a lot of their stars as well. Jaxson Dart comes out and completely rips the Raiders apart. He goes and throws for 207 yards, but rushes for, 48 yards and a pair of touchdowns. They could not slow him down one bit. And this is the thing for me when you go back and look at the absence of Maxx Crosby. And we'll start talking about Max's absence in a second here. But number 1, when he's not out there, somebody else needed to step up. We saw it on offense. Michael Mayer, Trey Tucker, they stepped up when Brock Bowers was out of the lineup. Nobody else along that defensive line really stepped up consistently today. And you know what that tells me? The Raiders need to throw a lot of money or a lot of draft capital at that defensive line and find Maxx a true running mate. Obviously, they thought they had that with Christian Wilkins. That didn't quite pan out with the injuries and all the craziness that happened as well. That seems like a light years away. But, God, they got to add some help along that defensive line so it's not just Maxx Crosby. You look at the teams around the league, they're pulling that whole two-headed approach along the defensive line. You got to be able to do that. Look at the Texans in terms of what they did in terms of Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter. Find him a running mate. And I know they've had some guys that have cycled through here over the years. Yannick Ngakoue, comes to mind, and those two were quite a duo. But, man, bring somebody else in here. Let them be a duo on the opposite side of Maxx Crosby. Or bring in somebody that can be a total game changer in the middle of that defensive line. Because right now, I don't know who you can bring back. This was supposed to be a big year for Tyree Wilson to take that next step. He wasn't able to do that. He's done it in spurts, but hasn't been able to do it at the rate that you would hope. Malcolm Kuntz, big season for him. He hasn't panned out as well. So I don't think you can justify paying that dude the money to come back. Adam Butler, I love his motor. That guy fights and battles his ass off each and every game. But is he a guy you're going to bring back? I think that would be a good one to bring back. But I think you need somebody else there along that defensive line. I think Adam Butler is one of those, one, good locker room guys, and two, a dude that is always going to give you 100% effort. We've heard Patrick Graham talk about that a lot as well. And then also two guys on the back end of the defense. You got to correct some of the issues back there. You need a new free safety and a new strong safety as well. Too many times you've seen Polamalu and obviously Lonnie Johnson Jr. having his struggles, but when Jeremy Chin was there as well, the coverage on the back end hasn't been great. I think they've got something in their corners if they're able to bring Eric Stokes back and then obviously continue to let Darian Porter develop. We talked a lot about him, so I won't beat a dead horse, but Darian Porter is developing, has gotten a lot of work. But today there was a whole lot of open space for a lot of the Giants receivers. Not very many guys that are names that many people would remember. Obviously, Darius Slayton is a guy that's been around the league a ton, but they don't got Malik out there. And still, dude's running free a lot. Can't let that happen against a bad team like this. So obviously, got to correct some of the middle of your defense as well. You got to find a linebacker that can cover too. That's something that needs to be added to that group. But let's get to the offense. Some of the positives. Obviously, there were a lot of issues. We see Geno turning it over and his problems there. Wait, we got to go back to Maxx. Sorry, I'm jumping around all over the place here, guys. And the fact that they shut him down. There's so many people that are throwing out the fact that, like, this was just a full-on tank job, and that's why they, shut Maxx and Brock down. Like, let's not forget, Brock has been hobbled since the second half of that Patriots game, in and out of lineup, constantly battling through it. So many times throughout the season, we saw all these reports about how he needs to just rest, and that's the only way this thing is going to heal. Well, they shut him down. They brought him back. He wasn't quite right yet. You stop him from getting hurt. That's why you bench him, or you put him on IR. Also with Maxx Crosby, you shut him down for the same reason. That guy first appeared on the injury report back in week 5. That game against the Chiefs, too, he was getting cut left and right. He was getting destroyed. Those guys are going after his knees nonstop. And if you go back and look at 12 of the last 17 practices, this guy was either limited or a DNP. Miss me with all that talk about the Raiders tanking, and that's why they put Maxx on IR. I get it. He's out there playing basketball at his house and on the trampoline and everything, and Maxx is a warrior. He would go out there and play if he had one leg chopped off. But this is, again, one of those instances where you do have to protect that guy from himself. And also, let's be real about where the season is going. You've got to see what else you have along that defensive line. So this isn't something that was just thrown out there. There's people saying that, the league's going to investigate him and take the picks. Go back and look at the injury reports. Maxx has been injured. He's been battling through it. There's no reason to put him out there at this point. Think about it. He and Brock both make the Pro Bowl. The team want to make sure that they got that point when they should have probably been shut down sooner because, yes, I know the season was lost quite some time ago. Well, they both make the Pro Bowl, then they got shut down because that's a little hat tip to, hey, you guys balled out for us. You still got the Pro Bowl nod. For Brock and Maxx, keeps those streaks going. Those are things that are important to players. They got them, then you shut them down and give them the time to really recover and rest. In terms of Maxx and the reports out there with Jay Glazer's a good reporter. Jay Glazer knows what he's doing. He's been in the business way longer than I, so I'm not trying to go after him one bit when he says that Maxx Crosby told him it's going to make him, reevaluate his future. I think this is just my informed opinion from being around the team, being around Maxx at the facility, all those different things and the conversations I've had with the guy over the years. That dude bleeds silver and black. But, man, he does nothing more than to play football and win. Okay, so you take football away from him in that moment. He's obviously going to be pissed. He thinks he can go out there and play because he's going to battle through it because that's who he is. So, yeah, he's going to say some things that maybe he doesn't quite mean. I think Maxx will get over that, especially if they do end up landing that top overall pick, second overall pick, whatever it is. and end up getting their quarterback of the future, that's an easy way to be able to erase a lot of things. Because at the end of the day, Max has said it many times, he just wants to win, and he wants to win here, and he wants to be a reason why they're doing that. And once the Raiders get that coach and quarterback, much easier said than done, Maxx Crosby needs to be a factor in doing that. I think cooler heads will prevail. I think Max comes back and plays for the silver and black. That narrative out there about him constantly being on the trade market and all that stuff, I hate that thing. I don't think there's any truth to any of that. I think he returns and comes back and plays for the Raiders and realizes that this is a growth thing for them. They finally needed to get to this point, to this low point. And if he's out there, he greatly increases their chances of winning. So that's kind of my take on the whole Maxx Crosby situation. It sucks for him. We did ask Pete after the game as well, and he noted the fact that no, Max was not in attendance for this game, but that he will be back at the facility on Monday morning. So all seems to be well. I wouldn't overreact too much until you hear it straight from Max. Obviously, he'll be talking about it on his podcast as well. So check out the Rush podcast to see what Max does have to say in regards to all of that. But again, I think that's a big hubbub about a whole lot of nothing, to be completely honest, in terms of Max and his future with this team. I think he'll be here. I think there's no way they trade him. And I may have to eat crow at some point on that. Who knows? But that's my read from a guy that's been covering the Raiders, since the year before they moved to Las Vegas. So I've been around the team, and I've been here for Max's entire career as well. I don't think he's going anywhere. Now let's move along to the offense and some of the positives from this game, okay? You go and look at the fact that, again, Brock Bowers shut down in this game. So you're like, okay, it's Ashton Jeanty and a whole bunch of other guys. Well, what happens? Michael Mayer steps up in this game, goes for a career-high day for him, and 9 catches for 89 yards off of 10 targets. That's some good work for him. Trey Tucker as well, 5 catches for 26 yards. But I want to talk about Michael Mayer, all right? Obviously, when Brock goes out of this one, Michael Mayer is one of those dudes who can be used in so many different ways. We saw him split out. We saw him in line, obviously. He did a lot of that at Notre Dame where he was split out wide, not just in the slot. He can do a lot of those things, and we saw a mix of all of that today. I think there's no reason that he can't be involved and do those types of things when Brock Bowers is healthy. 12 personnel is obviously so in vogue. Pete said after the game that he doesn't feel that when both of them are in the game, you can't target them, 10 times. You can't throw the ball to the tight end 20 times a game. I totally get it, but we've seen the Raiders have success doing that back to the Darren Waller's years, and also some of the success that they had offensively with Brock in the previous years as well for him. So, I think given the way things stand in the NFL and the increased usage of that 12 personnel, I think you can. And look, Pete Carroll's been doing it way longer than I've been alive. Let's be completely real. But there is a world to me where Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer can eat on a regular basis, and the two of them can be used so well. Look at the Seattle Seahawks, the way Clint Kubiak is doing things. He runs 12 and 13 personnel at a very, very high rate. Gets a lot of burn from both of those guys, from his tight ends, all the guys that he has in that room. There's no reason that the Raiders can't run things back with Brock and Michael Mayer next year and make that the best tight end room in the NFL. Those two are both very dynamic players. They can build around those guys offensively, along with an Ashton Jeanty. And then you go in and bring in a receiver, a playmaking receiver, a true number one receiver, and it's going to be a game changer for this offense. Obviously, there's a lot more issues. We've talked about the fact that the offensive line needs to be invested in, the defensive line needs to be invested in, and there's so much work and coaching that needs to be involved with both of those groups. I think Leonard is a great defensive line coach, so I really don't think they need to make a change there. But in terms of the O-line, obviously tons of changes need to be made there with personnel, with coaching, draft picks, capital in the offseason in terms of free agency, you name it. And I think the Raiders will finally do that, especially because, again, they're in position to get that quarterback. So you bring that quarterback in on the low rookie deal, and you invest the heck out of all the guys all around him in that one as well. So in terms of the other things, guys, just let me look through my notes. Oh, again, Trey Tucker really stepping up in this game, too. He's used in so many different ways, whether it's in the running game, whether it's as a receiver as well. 5 catches for 49 yards for him. Could have been a couple more. I know it was like 1 or 2 of them got taken back in terms of penalties and stuff like that. But, look, Trey Tucker, I talked about it a ton. He looked so good in training camp, was making all kinds of plays all over the field, and I thought he was poised for a breakout season. Obviously, that didn't work out for him or anybody on this Raiders offense because of all the issues that they have had. Well, look, Trey is developing nicely, and I think in an offense where things are moving a little bit better, where they have a better play caller, better offense as a whole, because I like what Greg Olsen has tried to do for the most part. You can only do so much with somebody else's groceries and somebody else's offense. But in terms of Trey Tucker, and when a new offensive coordinator, new play caller, whatever that looks like, is brought in next year, Trey Tucker's a guy that you can rely on as, I think, a solid number 2 receiver in this league, to be completely honest. You just need that guy that is going to be like a Jackson Smith and Jigman. I know I keep going back to the Seahawks, but because I think Clint Kubiak is a very interesting look for the Raiders. Look at what he's done with a lot of lackluster quarterback play over the years. Bring him in here, let him pick his quarterback of the two guys at the top of the draft, and boom, maybe something else happens there. But that's going to be a discussion we'll be talking about so much as things go on, and obviously we'll get more clarity on how things stand for the Raiders and their coaching situation once the season does come to an end. So we'll have plenty of time to talk about all of that. In terms of Ashton Jeanty, look, after the big game, I think he had 188 total scrimmage yards in the game against the Texans. He comes out today, rushes 16 times for 60 carries, has 2 catches for 13 yards, so he goes for 73 total yards. No touchdowns for him, but is involved in the passing game again. Continues to show folks that, hey, he's got those receiving chops, catches that back shoulder ball off the one from Geno spinning around. That was one hell of a catch. Ashton showed it a couple times. I believe he had a run of 14 yards and another run of 24 yards of those 60 on the day. He's showing he can do it in bursts when he does get those seams, when he gets a little bit of room, you know. So many of his rushing yards, like over 80% of his rushing yards this year, have been after contact. Give this guy some room, and again, that'll change when more has been done. In terms of Geno Smith and that injury, Pete said afterwards that it was a high ankle sprain. I would imagine he'll be healthy enough to play next week. What do they do at that position with him? I don't know. I said it multiple times. I think Pete's going to want to go out with this guy. So if Geno can go, they're going to throw him out there. I don't think that's going to be a move where we see them shut him down for that final game against the Chiefs. But who knows, man? Buckle up. It's going to be an interesting ride to the finish for the Raiders. I'm just going to cycle here through my notes to make sure I touched on most of the stuff that I did want to get through here in this one. Yeah, that was about it. Again, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you guys had an awesome holidays with your family. Got New Year's coming up. Hope you enjoy it. Have a great week, and we will be back here at Allegiant Stadium breaking down the game against the Chiefs, which, again, slates up to be a very interesting one. Ryan Hogue called it on the podcast a couple weeks ago before the Chiefs were actually eliminated from the playoffs. He said that they're going to be eliminated from the playoffs, and they're going to ruin the Raiders' chance with the number 1 overall pick. It's now slating, and they have the opportunity to do that. It's going to be fascinating to see how that game pans out. That's where it's going to be another game of some real rough football to watch. But given how things transpired today, I think I like the Raiders' chances to lose in that one. I'll be real curious to see what the number is. Haven't looked at it in terms of if they're favorites, if they're not, whatever. Matt Peralt said, don't bet this game against the Giants tonight. Well, yeah, he was right. This was one that was going to be hard to wrap your head around. We saw the number flip. The Giants go on and win by 24 points. Yeah, I wouldn't have wanted to invest in that as well. But I'm sure some people threw some money down on the Giants, and you liked it. If you threw some money down on Geno Smith, anytime interception, you got that as well, too. So we'll see how things pan out for this team. We'll be back at the facility next week, getting it all. Make sure you guys do tune in to us on our YouTube channel throughout the week as well. We got those podcasts dropping on Wednesday and Friday mornings. Also, check us out online at silverandblacksportsnetwork.com and subscribe to that free Raiders newsletter. We appreciate all the support. Like I said, you guys have been awesome this season in what has been a very rough year to launch this channel, but the engagement, all that stuff has been through the roof. So I really do appreciate you guys sticking with me throughout the season. So, again, thanks again, guys. And we'll be back down here at Allegiant Stadium next week, breaking down the final game of the season and looking ahead to the offseason for real, I guess, right? Anyway, thanks again for tuning in, guys. We'll catch you later. Have a good one.